the main thing I thought would be valuable for this crowd would be focusing on next-gen companies. This is my 15 jobs. I've been in different companies, and there are slight differences in different companies you work at. And my focus is on portraying a picture for what I call the next-gen companies, and then what is unique from my personal perspective, actually being on the other side, talking to 10 technology partners on a daily basis. So I'm going to use Uber as an example for that. So Uber has grown 43% year-on-year growth in trips from the last year, 55% year-on-year gross bookings growth. This is what we make before we give earnings to our drivers. Around 67% growth for net revenue. Ride-sharing industry is actually a loss-making proposition, but we are losing less money than other people in the market. That's because of incentive promotions. Like if you drive for 40 hours a week, you get extra $300. That $300 is actually funded by investments that comes into a company like Uber. 100 million riders worldwide. 3 million drivers, even though we're not an employer. 3 million is actually, we're only surpassed by Department of Defense in terms of number of workers working for a company. We actually surpass even People's Liberation Army of China with 2.3 million people. 70 countries, 700 cities, around 15,000 employees, around 30,000 BPO agents located in 25 different countries. Around 750 hubs, what we call, these are locations where you can sign up to be an Uber driver. Around 300,000 concurrent trips, so this is around, if you do the math, 10,000 trips an hour and 200 trips every second. So it's like 200 trips happening every second to support that infrastructure. Around 7 billion trips worldwide until now. And some of the products, UberX, this is our flagship product that competes with the taxis. Probably you guys are aware of it. Uber Pool, this is the actual ride-sharing arm of Uber, taking carbon out of cars out of the road and carbon out of our atmosphere. This is Uber Express Pool. This tries to compete with the public transportation around the world. For example, a ride between one end of San Francisco and the other end on UberX probably is around $10. And Uber Pool made it around $6. Uber Express Pool probably made it $4.50 to $5. And Muni is at $2.50. So the goal is for us to really be at par with public transportation cost. And for that to happen, we need to have take the labor out and have self-driving fleet on the road. We have Uber Lite. So Uber, unlike Facebook, YouTube, and other apps, very light. It doesn't transmit a lot of data. And even lighter versions we have launched in some emerging markets where you can actually launch this in 2G. Uber Select, this is your premium car that you can hire. Uber Black, same as Uber Select, but you get a professional driver along with it. Uber XL for your families. And this is the most premium product, Uber SUV. You get a bigger car, a premium car, and a professional driver to go with it. We have a product called Uber Wave. This is Jamil. He is in London. It's legally required in London to actually have a ramp for taxis, but people don't stop for disabled people in a lot of markets because it's just a hassle for people to stop. So, but with Uber Wave, he can actually schedule a ride and actually have taxis that support disabled people to take them for a ride. It's changed his life. We have Uber for Business. This is, we sell into your travel departments, which you don't have to really expense it. It's just a profile that comes on your Uber. And so if you want to talk to me about it afterwards. Uber Eats, this is growing. Till now we've been transporting human beings with our network. Uber at the end of the day is a network company. And what can we use that network for? Till now we've been using that network to transport people. Can we use that for things? And food is one of the things that we can transport. And this is growing faster than Uber because there's no lobbying for food delivery industry yet. Uber Freight. Uber Freight industry in America is 4 times bigger than ride-sharing industry. It's a lifeline of America that runs America on a daily basis. It happens on calls manually. So this app actually connects our truckers and shippers. We have Uber self-driving fleets, which is horizontal. It's a technology we're co-developing. Same for Uber self-driving trucks. Same technology, but and this can be deployed on Uber Freight. We have Uber jump bikes. So if you're in San Francisco, you might have seen some of the jump bikes around. These take me from downtown San Francisco to Caltrain in probably 8 minutes, where Uber takes 15, 20 minutes. So it really changes the game for in cities, densely populated cities. We have Uber Health. 30% of American appointments to healthcare providers are canceled because they don't have a mode to go to the hospital. And this is an app and also a web-based portal where the healthcare providers can schedule a ride for your parent and then take them to the hospital. And it's also better for the hospitals because the prevention is better than cure for a lot of these insurance and hospital companies too. We have Uber Boat in Croatia. You can actually hail this on the Croatian coast if you're ever in Croatia. We have Uber Elevate. These are elevated, how we believe that skyscrapers really changed the skyline because there's no place to go but grow up. Similarly, transportation will go up, and we have pilot running in Dubai, Dallas, and Los Angeles. We have MOU with the mayors there. So the reason I painted that picture is this is the problem we're trying to solve. We're trying to make transportation as reliable as running water. And we're trying to, if you think about transportation, to think about Uber and have one place for all your transportation needs, and for us to be the point of partnership for any public transportation option that you want to take anywhere in the world, anytime you go from point A to point B. So now let's come back to, if you're a services company, tech services companies selling into some company like Uber, what are some of the potential challenges I personally have seen when people sell into companies like this? I think it's the war for talent. Is the talent you're providing at par with the talent that's already at these next-gen companies? Because if you're augmenting or if you're doing a project, there needs to be a parity in terms of the product eng, dev, QA resources that you provide, because otherwise there's a huge mismatch. And people like to, when somebody comes for a project or on-site, they like to have them talking the same language. So we have seen a very different pool of candidates that we, as a company, get and our outsourced providers get. And the whole talent pool, when they're throwing themselves at these top companies, and the very companies they're trying to sell into, gets the talent, and you're fighting for the same talent to augment these companies. And it's, unless you get the right people, it's all about the right talent. If you get the right talent, you can open doors. And that's the key feature why I feel a lot of these services companies fail to make the pitch. And also when they are preferred employers for choice of things like diversity, and they are out there in the market. And when you get food like this, cafe food like this, looks like this every day at companies like this, hard to get the talent too. So it's all about the talent. And when there is upside for stock appreciation during IPO, especially for pre-IPO companies, would they want to join a company which is a company like this, or think about, you can replace it with any IT services company that you are representing. And there is free immigration assistance. It's a huge deal for a lot of services, people in the service industry. and no questions asked policies. And also notice the next-gen companies, tech companies, like to insource their secret sauce, which is their development, product, and QA. And right now, we have very less IT outsourcing at Uber, partly because of this reason. People hold it close to their chests, and this is the IP that makes them go. And how easy or difficult is it to get headcount? Never had a problem getting headcount at Uber, so would you rather put it as a headcount or as an outsourced resource? This is one of the other issue I get when I talk to people who actually hire services companies for projects and for staff aug. It's the perception, real, in some cases real, or perceived low quality of resources that is being thrown at that engagement in general. And of course, that's why next-gen companies have a barometer of their own talent to compare with, unfortunately. And next-gen tech companies are solving complex problems. Is your talent skilled enough to provide support on these projects, whether it's self-driving vehicles, blockchain, AI? Of course, you need to have all these to get into the door, but what happens when you actually start deploying resources? Are you skilled enough to fulfill the demand? And it's not all doomsday. A few things that can work out, I feel. You just have to say the right thing, and even bring the feedback back to your companies to adjust your strategy in certain ways that appeal to these next-gen companies. I would say, I love my salespeople and people I have high regard and deep esteem for salespeople, but I feel that bring a top technical pre-sales talent to the meetings, and they really do help win deals and earn respect of the tech teams, because even a director, VP, they're pretty hands-on. They've done what they've done in many companies, and you basically are doing the same tech talk, if I may, between the teams. And that's one big thing. The biggest complaint I hear after meetings with services companies is, hey, can we talk to some real engineers in here? We just don't get the right audience. Well, look at companies which are just going to go IPO or plan to go IPO. This IPO slush fund, as I call it, that gets allocated for compliance. For a lot of them, more than 50% of it gets allocated for technology projects. It's a good place to go mine for your next project, and tighter controls that come through when you're pre-IPO. Is there a new tech leadership in a company? As you probably know, outsourcing is a wave, it comes and goes. They might be looking to shake things up. So some of my smart friends in the on the IT services side always follow key executives in the industry, so they know where they're going, what's happening. So always a new change is good for them. This is, I think I've seen some companies use this technique to a really good advantage. A lot of the companies, when we talk to them, let's say it's projects, staff aug, resourcing, they come with 3-year, 5-year proposals to lock in. Of course, that's how you recognize revenue. But how do you make it really the barrier of entry very low? Can I do a try and buy? Can I do 3 months and then figure out what I want to do with these resources, whether it's on-site, offshore, nearshore, really bring down the barrier of entry. And I've seen some companies use this very effectively. They've created advisory boards for the key personnel from the companies that they're trying to sell into, not just for the fact that they can talk shop with them, but also to get feedback from them, put that back into their product roadmap or services roadmap, investment roadmap. It's a win-win for both companies because you get access, you get their feedback, and some of them might even convert to be your advocates within the company. So I think it's a really good way to engage with the key executives in a company. And this is, I don't think this is specific for next-gen companies. Are you building this relationship even before we think of outsourcing? Uber has not been a great tech outsourcer. We do, of course, do BP outsourcing, but of course we have certain relationship and who we know we want to contact when we actually start doing a bunch of tech outsourcing. And also the timing. Give an example of Wells Fargo having the fine instituted on them by the US government. There's a huge fund right now for basically for compliance, and a lot of it goes for tech money. And there are right people, right companies who have targeted those funds to get in at the right time, and that's the outsourcing, start of an outsourcing relationship with a new company. So you have to pick the right time too. And one simple question I think people fail to ask, and if they ask, it solves a lot of problems, is how easy or difficult is it for you to obtain headcount in your company? Because if it's easy, why would they actually want to outsource and you move on to the next client? If it's harder, then you help them build a case, and I think you have a better chance of actually outsourcing. Poor performance of a company is a good indicator that they are want to cut costs by outsourcing. This is not just applicable for next-gen companies. Bundling. Since Uber is in a certain place, and similarly, a lot of next-gen companies are in a place where there's more of a relationship with the software, cloud, hardware vendors. Can you do a bundle deal with some of the software, hardware, and cloud vendors? Do you have partnerships where that they can be a door opener into these into companies that do not have a lot of IT outsourcing, services outsourcing? Have you thought about being the service arm for a product company and maybe even actually being built on their paper? We do a lot of implementations with a lot of services, a lot of cloud hardware and software vendors and telecom vendors. Can you be their service arm? Of course, they also have their own professional services implementations arm, but that's for, if you forge a good partnership, you probably can get into the door. This is, I think, one of the main selling points if somebody can focus on. So half of my job is to really make sure that any tech dollar Uber spent is indeed competitive with the Googles and Facebooks and Amazons of the world. But the other half is to be the first mover. How can I beat the other company to a certain technology or a certain product or a certain market? So I eventually end up spending more than I would have otherwise if I had time, but that's a cost of being there first. So can you actually position yourself as a time leader rather than a cost leader? I can get this done to you the fastest. And you can actually even charge a premium for that. And a lot of these next-gen companies are willing to pay that premium for optimizing for time rather than costs. And be part of the community that these next-gen companies are building to solve complex problems. So this is our former head of Uber, Elevate, actually giving, we had a summit in LA talking about Uber Elevate, and we brought in partners from different areas to help us make this a reality. So be part of forums like this, join forces, and you're not just throwing bodies at us, but you're trying to be part of that solutioning of the problem. Similarly, there are other initiatives like Open Compute, for which Facebook has initiated, a lot of them in the industry. With that, I want to leave you with a thought, which is, I feel in business relationships, is the most coveted title is being a trusted advisor. And if you can get that from any of these next-gen companies, they're moving so fast that they really don't have time to go bid. they really don't have time to, so the partners really get a lot of business in these companies.
Somebody brought this up earlier, but it's quite relevant. So you're talking about searching for parity or need for parity in your outsourced partners. In that pursuit and the other disruptive things you're dealing with, how much do these immigration, travel ban, sort of hostilities, if you will, affect what you're trying to do?
Well, Uber has made an official position on the travel ban and immigration, which is we are against it. And we feel America was built on immigrants, and we want to have people with opportunity to come and get a better chance at making their own future. It definitely plays a huge part because I don't know the exact percentage. There's a huge percentage of Uber tech workforce that are immigrants, and it not only Uber, but I'm sure a lot of your companies and other next-gen companies are affected by it. It is not something that we would support.
For a company that is hyper-growing, how do you deal internally as an organization? Because we read a lot of times that hierarchical companies are dead. Some other network-based organizations are arising. For you that are experienced this hyper-growth, how do you attack this question internally?
Well, if I understand your question right, how do you deal with the hyper-growth internally from a structure, from a management perspective? So it's a very different problem to have. Of course, our growth is slowed from last year, partly because the base is growing. So it was 100% year on year. It's 50% year on year now. Our workforce is average worker 6 months old in the company. We have 16,000 people, and average age is somewhere in the mid-20s. So it is something where we hire from, and Uber is, the structure of Uber is a tech company and an ops company. At the end of the day, we are in 700 cities, so technically all cities run as independent GM structures where they have their own P&L, and we have some central support staff from a tech perspective. Very different from other companies like Facebook and Google too, because they make money by making you click on ads. On the digital space, we actually make money only if you take people from in a real life from point A to point B. And that comes with a lot more challenges, a lot more responsibility and safety, security concerns. And internally, it's an exciting time for a lot of the employees. So everyone is excited and hyped up about solving real world challenges, which people can touch and feel and see. And the sense is that your job has not, for the next 12 months, has not been invented yet because you're growing. So it's like a rocket ship. So people don't. If people say there's bureaucracy in a meeting, that actually kills that point, and then we.
You spoke about optimizing time for cost. Would you be able to elaborate a little bit, Rahul?
Yeah. So it's. I'll take Uber Elevate for example. Let's say we want to be the first player in the market to launch something like that. So there is a little bit of a time advantage that you get being the first player. There is time advantage for being a first network effect provider. Uber is in 70 countries. It used to be in 80 countries. We sold off our DD division in China, Grab division for 8 countries in Southeast Asia, and 4 countries in Russia, Kazakhstan area. And our competitor Lyft is in 1 country and then going into the 2nd country, which is I think Canada, based on my last knowledge. So there is definitely a first mover advantage in moving to these countries and moving to these markets. And even though Uber app is something that is a lot of, I would say 90-95% of it's standard, but there's some still customization required for the local products like this Uber Moto that I showed, which basically is like similar concept as Uber X, but it's on a motorbike. So people pick you up on a motorbike, and it's live in, let's say, Bangkok and Hyderabad, where it's just hard to get around in a in an urban environment. So you need customization, which means there's huge customization opportunity. Right now, we do have resources to do it. Tomorrow, with cost pressures, we might outsource it in these local markets. Uber Lite was an app built purely in India for India because we need the 3G coverage is pretty bad in India. So now we can use that for other emerging markets too. So it's a build. So today we built it in-house. Tomorrow it could be an outsourced play.
Yes, two questions. You mentioned that you have 30,000 BPO employees or
Yeah,
people working for you.
it's a
Could
flex
you-
model, but
Yeah, could you tell us where those BPO centers are located and also your software development centers are located? And the other question is, you mentioned that this is your 15th job. Did you mention that?
Yeah.
Could you elaborate a little bit on that if you would do it just the same if you were starting again?
Sorry, could you
If
repeat
you
the
were
last?
starting again, would you do it just like that?
I think the first question, we have these 30,000 agents based in 25 different locations worldwide. It is based on language-based support, so English goes to Manila. We have a lot of European language support based out of Morocco. We have Arabic support based out of Egypt. We have Belo Horizonte for Spanish and Portuguese support. And we have Colombia and few markets, Costa Rica, India for India play. We have Pakistan for Pakistan play. So and I'm probably missing a bunch of the locations, but so those are our outsourced locations and partners. And for software development, as I said, we're not a big IT outsourcer yet. So most of the tech talent is actually here in San Francisco in the HQ. And we have some presence in Amsterdam. We are building up a development center captive in India. We're building, we have some in Singapore, some in Latin America, sporadic, but nothing major from an outsource. The shortest, the largest engagement we have is we have a maps engagement. So we see these mapping cars go around mapping roads. So we have presence in 80 countries where these mapping cars actually go around, map these roads. And map is a competitive advantage for a company like Uber because that's the key feature on which we build our products. And we want to have our own maps and POIs and all of that. So we have some 3,000, 4,000 agents based in India who actually do the metadata analysis of these maps. And so it's technically techno-business work that happens. And on the second one, I actually got advised by a lot of my mentors and career coaches at that time, or people, executives, maybe you should stick to a company for 10 years and that's how you progress. And so I was really skeptical making the moves I made, but now I have something to speak for from an experience I gained from those. That's how I look at it. I'm sure other people look at it differently.
Okay, time for one more quick one. Anybody? Yes. Okay.
Hi.
Monica.
Monica Hernandez with Mass Global Consulting with operations in Colombia and the US. Uber is not alone in the shared economy space. I'm curious about which of the emerging technologies, AI, blockchain, IoT, do you think is more strategic to give Uber that competitive edge, especially as it relates to providing that ultimate personalized customer experience that everyone seems to be after these days?
Thank you. So we are actually heavily invested in two of the three things you mentioned, which is machine learning, AI. We have a machine learning center of excellence in Toronto, led by one of the leading machine learning experts in the world. And those algorithms need to be fed into our self-driving algorithms, and there's definitely a play there. It's heavily invested in that. There's a huge investment in IoT too. At the end of the day, Uber is all about, there's no mobility, there's no Uber. And there is connected devices, connected things. Until now, it's been connected people who actually make Uber work. Now it's connected things. And there's self-driving cars that have IoT connections. We have self-driving trucks that have IoT connections, mapping vehicles. We have OBD to dongles in certain cars that have IoT connections. We have Uber Eats tablets. So it's interesting that there are 100,000 restaurants that we have onboarded on Uber Eats, which is our Eats platform. And we give tablets to these restaurants because we don't want to compete with real estate space from other providers. Everyone gives a tablet. If you go to a concierge in a restaurant, there's so many tablets there. Now, it was all Wi-Fi enabled tablets. And then what we realized is Wi-Fi is not as predictable as is in the US in a lot of markets. We actually then put an IoT SIM in it so that if Wi-Fi goes down, it picks up and you keep the business up and running. So a lot of use cases actually power revenue. And on the blockchain, there are some experiments going on, but we're also still figuring out what the real actual valuable use cases for blockchain is. So we have, we're probably dipping our feet into any emerging technology that you can think about.
Okay, Rahul, thank you
Thank
so
you, everyone.
much.
I appreciate your time.